Rev up your engines!
Here we go, Dodge is at it again. Boy, their lack of quality, I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. Now they're recalling 173 of the Challengers and Chargers, their big monster cars, because they put the wrong size wheels on them. They put tires that are the wrong size. Tires can rub against the steering knuckle, could cause a blowout and kill you. Now let's face it, the people that drive those Challengers and Chargers, they're going to be driving like maniacs. They should be making sure they're at least putting the right size tires on them. I mean, who's running this company? They can't even put the right tire on their high-end muscle cars. I mean, okay, I could understand if it was on their cheap econo box cars, but these things are pretty expensive. You'd think that they would put the right tires on them, but they didn't. Anybody that thinks Fiat buying Chrysler was a good idea, it's getting to be almost comical, unless, of course, you owned one and you were going 100 miles an hour and you're cornering and then the tire rubs against the steering knuckle and the tire blows up and flips up and you get killed. Wouldn't be very funny then. So, man, alive, what are those people at Dodge doing? Greasy Sasquatch says, Scotty, how accurate is carcomplaints.com? I'm thinking popular car models are going to have more complaints just because there's more of them out there. Yeah, you got a very good point, and that's the problem with any kind of complaint service is. If you got 5 million cars out there, you got 5 million possible problems. So even if 0.01% have problems, you can get a lot of complaints. A car, they don't sell that many, maybe people won't even bother complaining. There aren't that many people to complain about. Only generally a small amount of percentage of people are going to complain anyways. The problem with anything like that is, where does the data come from? A lot of times the data will come from people who are angry at that company. Perhaps they work for a competitor company, somebody who works for the company itself. They say good things about the vehicles instead, and they will deliberately dish other ones. I knew a mechanic down the road that he had his guys, when they weren't working, he'd had them go to other mechanics and complain about the other mechanics to make them all look bad. So if they looked up, he'd have some glowing reviews, which his mechanics actually put the glowing reviews for himself on too. But the other guys would have all these bad reviews, but they were being done by his mechanics too, in their spare time to try to get more business to come to him. So a lot of stuff you read on the internet, you know, take it with a few grains of salt if you want the truth. Perino says, Scotty, we're looking at the new 2020 Lexus NX300 with the 2.0 turbocharged four-cylinder engines. If you plan on keeping them long-term like I do, any four-cylinder turbocharged engine is going to wear out faster. Toyota makes great engines. There's no arguing that. But all the turbocharger does is it rams extra air in, and that's the same as increasing the compression inside the engine. The higher the compression, the faster things are going to wear out. That's just a plain fact. I've been in the turbos, and truthfully, I don't like that turbo engine in a Lexus because it does make more noise, it does rev a little higher, and it's not as smooth of a ride as the V6 engine is. Next question is Benny Boy 10. Scotty, my car's been idling kind of rough. I was wondering what it could be. There's no codes or anything. It's something obvious, like it's misfiring. It's going to have a code for the misfire. If it's idling poorly, but it's not tripping any codes, the first thing I advise you to do, change the fuel filter. Most cars have no idea what the fuel pressure is, so if the fuel pump has a clogged filter after it, pressure will be low and it can idle bad. Also, pressure test the fuel pump. Generally, those won't be tripped. Now, let's say it's a problem that's just starting out, like a vacuum leak. A big vacuum leak, it's going to trip a code. Small one won't, so check for little vacuum leaks. If it is shaking just at idle, check the air filter. Could be clogged up. Or also check a motor mount. I got lots of videos this year. You can get a little jack and a piece of wood, put it under the engine, jack it up, and if you jack it up and you see the motor mount separating, it means the motor mount rubber's broken and it needs a new motor mount. It could be that simple. If you have a transmission that's starting to go out, when you put it in drive and it's idling, it'll often start to shake because it's straining the engine too much. But once you get going, then you're going fast, it doesn't matter. But at an idle, if the transmission or the torque converter inside starts to go out, it can idle really rough. Pray it's not that. EJ Percussion says, Scotty, I got a 2013 Honda CR-V, 80,000 miles. I recently bought used. It has that dreaded rattle. Honda claims it's a VTC actuator, but people said it could be tensioner, chain, lots of other things. It runs fine. It just makes noise on startup. But long term, will it hurt my engine? Something breaks, yes, it'll hurt your engine. That was a known flaw on those things. Didn't you hear it when you bought it? When you heard it when you bought it, you should have just walked away because you don't want to mess with engine work. I've had customers driving that way for years, but they bought the cars ages ago, and over time it started to make the noise. Some of them have still gone 2 or 3 years and they're still going down the road. But I mean, if that chain breaks, pistons hit the valves, goodbye engine, you might take it to a good reputable mechanic and see what they think is wrong and what they charge to diagnose it correctly by taking the cover off and really analyzing it inside and see if that's something you want to spend on fixing, or whether you just want to get rid of the stupid thing now, or if you didn't pay too much money for it, just sell it on and take a little bit of loss and learn never to buy a used vehicle that has any kind of rattling noise when you start the engine up, because there's so many things that can do it. Most of them are pretty expensive to fix. Rory 874 says, Scotty, my wife's car is driving home from school, all of a sudden started to lose power. She couldn't go faster than 35. When she got home, I plugged it in and it said that it was in limp home mode. Help! Limp home mode is exactly what it says. If you have a problem with your vehicle, it will put it into limp home mode and only allow you to drive a certain speed so that you don't damage the transmission or damage the engine or burn out the catalytic converter. It's a safety feature. It means that you have a relatively serious problem in the vehicle. If it still will go 35 miles an hour and isn't making horrendous noises, drive it to the mechanic and see what they say. Odds are it's going to be a pretty expensive repair, because when they do that and only go 35, there's generally something relatively seriously wrong with the car. So have a good mechanic like myself check it out. Just don't take it to some, fly-by-night chain repair shop where they're just trying to sell it. Take it to a place where there's guys who really know how to work on cars and can explain it to you. If they can't explain it to you, go somewhere else. It still drives. It's not like you towed it there and you're at their mercy. Then go to the next guy. If at all possible, you can drive your car, drive it. Because if you tow it somewhere, they got you by the short and curlies. You already spent $150, $200 on a tow. If it's drivable, drive it. Get an idea what's going on. Let them explain. If they can't explain, go to the next one. See it, Noah 171 says, good morning, my 2016 RAV4 all-wheel drive. The tire light was flashing, I was driving. It flashed and stayed on, checked all 4 wheels. The pressure was fine, tried resetting the light, but it didn't work. I started it again, and it was 25 degrees. Then it was 57, and it stopped flashing. It's 35, and it's doing it again. Help. You got a problem with your tire pressure monitoring system, for sure. It's a 2016 RAV4. It's got a pretty good system on it. You go to a mechanic like myself, we have a scan tool you plug in. All those codes are memorized, and it will show where the problem area is. Odds are it's got a bad wire or a bad sensor, and it would show the data. We would see if it said it had a problem with the left front wheel. Then we'd drive it with the scan tool and we'd look at all the data. If we see 3 wheels say it's going 30 and that wheel doesn't, then the sensor's probably broken, and we change that first and pray that it's not a computer fault where it gets to be a real stinker tracing all that stuff down. But the data is memorized in your car. Any good mechanic, plug in his machine. If he doesn't have a machine that can read that, don't go to him. Go to a mechanic who has the correct equipment, because modern cars require a lot of equipment to work on. If you want to fix it, you got to find a guy with it. Now, if you don't care and you check your pressure like I do, all my cars are so old they don't have sensors on them, then just buy a tire gauge for $5 and check it yourself and ignore all that stupid crap. Sparkling Claw says, what do you think of the 60s El Caminos? Are they solid build? Yeah, they were solid build. Those are heavy things. They got horrible gas mileage because they were so heavy. They were also rust buckets. Almost every single one that I see, the frame's rotten, the firewalls, everything is rusting away. Back in those days, they didn't use any kind of real anti-rust coating on the things, and they would just rust and rust and rust. Now, if you can find one like that, spend its life in Arizona or New Mexico or Texas, away from the ocean so there's no salt water, and the frame is solid and everything, hey, go ahead and get one and fix it up. They're fun cars. But for you northern boys, hey, be real leery about buying one of those things. They were rust buckets and they'll just fall apart in front of your eyes. And don't ever do what I've seen some people do. Don't ever get a northern car and bring it down here to Houston, because here it's humid. And if you got a car that's starting to rust from up north and the salt and the water and the winter to keep the ice from freezing on the highways, it's already rusting, and the humidity of Houston will make it go so bad. I've seen them where you open the door and the door falls off after a couple of years, because this humidity will destroy them too. So you want a solid rust-free frame one if you're going to work on one. Jason Coe says, Scott, I got a 97 Chevy Cavalier. The low beam headlights won't work, but the high beams do. The markers work. Side lamps work. What could be wrong? If just the low ones don't work, first just check the bulbs. It could be easily a burnout bulbs. And get yourself a little test meter. Unplug where the bulbs are plugged in. Turn the headlight switch on. see if you're getting power when you turn the switch on. If you're not getting power, then either the switch is bad, the wiring's bad, or your fuse is blown. Then you check one at a time. You go logical. If you wanted to test the switch, make sure it's getting power in. It's got power going in, you know it's getting power. Then turn the switch on. If power doesn't come out, you know the switch is bad. If power does come out, then you know it's a wiring problem. Now let's say you go to the headlamps and the headlamps aren't burned out and they're getting power when you turn on. Then you got a ground problem. You need power and ground in a direct current system. So then check the ground wiring. That wire goes to the body of the vehicle. If you reground them and they work, then just do that. Just cut the ground wire, splice a new one, and put it to the ground and bolt it to the body of the car, and away you go. It's always logical. There's got to be something logical. Electricity, you can't see it, but it always works logically. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.